Sources in Ecuador suggest that the submarine shooting occurred in the Pacific Ocean, probably between the borders of Colombia and Ecuador, which would explain how deportation of Colombian and Ecuadorian survival was so swift. This hypothesis is sustained by the fact that Donald Trump avoided mentioning either Venezuela or the Caribbean in regards to that fentanyl-oriented operation. Meanwhile, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamla Perssad, continues in hiding, and President Gustavo Petro of Colombia has received an accusation by Donald Trump that he would be a leader of a cartel, equating him to Nicolas Maduro. We have two constitutional presidents in South America who are accused of being terrorists. It looks like Venezuelan military deterrence has become so formidable with ample alliances with China, Iran, and Russia that the United States is seeking to continue the show of killing civilian boats into other countries. It is time for Venezuela and Colombia to reunite in Gran Colombia, just as it was designed by Simón Bolívar, as we face a common threat of United States invasion. Donald Trump has already addressed the possibility of attacking Colombia by land, as he has already suggested he would do the same upon Venezuela. The latest boat killing, which happened a few hours ago, was actually a Colombian boat in Colombian territorial waters, suggesting that it was operated by a Colombian terrorist organization. United States labels everyone as terrorist, both in the Middle East and in South America. And as a result, many South American citizens sympathize with the plight of sanctioned or harassed individuals. And of course, we cannot forget our good friend from Guyana, Asruddin Mohammed, who is also harassed, sanctioned by OFAC, and convicted by United States criminal courts. The breadth and scope of people who consider international law more importantly than domestic law of the United States is a target of the Trump regime. The Trump regime is also supported by a Venezuelan diaspora who has been trying to seek regime change and whose members should be arrested if they arrive into a Venezuelan airport, as yesterday they completely misunderstood the meaning of the religious proclamation of San Jose Gregorio Hernández and Madre Rendiles. The Vatican celebration was politicized, including harassment to the Venezuelan ambassador into the Holy See. Fortunately, the incident remained localized at specific groups in Vatican City and in the most extremist posts of social media. In general, Venezuelan population is rejoicing this jubilee as we are celebrating our first two saints. We were expecting a United States missile or drone strike into Venezuelan land, and instead we are watching an unexpected increase of scope on the war on the Caribbean, targeting Colombia and its president. Presidents Petro and Maduro are both protecting the legacy of Liberator Simón Bolívar, and this United States harassment and threats of war should provide us an opportunity to increase economic ties and military ties. Colombians and Venezuelans are very similar populations. Our culture is identical in the coast and identical in the mountains. We should seek to reunify in the fashion that East Germany and West Germany reunified not long ago. A united Venezuela and Colombia would encourage Ecuador and Panama to follow suit. Ecuador is already being harassed by the United States as it is killing its citizens or wounding them severely. The government of President Noboa is an ally of the United States and will increasingly face the same awkward situation of Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamla Perssad, who is being asked how can she tolerate such a war on the Caribbean when her own citizens of Trinidad and Tobago or citizens of Ecuador, in the case of Noboa, are being killed or wounded, mostly killed. This war on the Caribbean doesn't seem to have any purpose. No evidence suggests that drug consumption in the United States has decreased in the last 2 months. To the contrary, the Caribbean community has issued a communique establishing the pursuit of peace as our maximum objective, privileging constructive dialogue and peaceful conflict resolution. Countries of the Caribbean community include Belize, Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, Dominica, Barbados, Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. All of these countries unanimously are pursuing peace, even in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, where Prime Minister Kamla Perssad declined by herself to contradict the rest of the CARICOM, which also, by the way, includes Suriname and Guyana. Nevertheless, population of Trinidad and Tobago is already feeling the first inconveniences provided by the war on the Caribbean, as they are not supposed to approach the territories occupied by United States embassies and facilities. Bogota, the capital of Colombia, recently experienced protests against the United States Embassy, while the United States yesterday conducted impressive protests in cities such as Boston, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. And New York, of course. United States of America is becoming a rogue country, while the peoples of Trinidad and Tobago, Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador are increasingly considering the threat of a United States war that could destroy all of us. Prime Minister of Grenada is reported on a state visit to African countries. Upon return to Grenada, he should decide whether to allow or disallow United States military presence at the international airport of Grenada's capital, St. George. Cuba-Russia relationship has increased to levels comparable to the Cold War. Russian military equipment is being rushed into Cuba as the Caribbean prepares its own defense against United States offense. Russian missiles, drones, aircraft, submarines, and vessels will be available for Cuban and Venezuelan militaries who will be in charge of protecting the Caribbean for the benefit of the rest of the countries in the region. As United States continues threatening presidents, sanctioning citizens of our countries, removing visa privileges, and deploying more military, anti-Americanism is expected to increase. Personal meeting between Presidents Trump and Putin will happen within 2 weeks, and it is expected that Vladimir Putin will remind Donald Trump that the Caribbean is also a Russian sphere of influence. United States' goal is to separate Colombia and Venezuela by harassing Gustavo Petro and threatening him that he might have the same fate of Nicolas Maduro. However, the fate of Nicolas Maduro has actually improved as his popularity has increased. As you can see, President Maduro in daily activities with the Venezuelan population with massive participation, including last night's vigil from La Pastora Parish to La Candelaria Parish, as devout Catholics expected sanctification of Jose Gregorio Hernandez and Madre Rendiles. Colombia is being depleted of humanitarian aid that it was provided for its fight on drugs. However, President Petro claims that his efforts of seizing drugs have been so effective that much of the drug traffic has been migrated into Ecuador. It remains to be seen whether President Trump will go against his ally President Noboa of Ecuador, as numerous international sources qualify Ecuador as the top drug exporter of Latin America. United States conditioned help is evident in the case of Argentina, where President Milei will be given $20 billion of bailout if and only if his party gains majority of Congress elections. United States is trying to instill fear in Argentine voters so that they vote for Milei's political party and not to vote for the opposition, because if they voted for the opposition, the $20 billion bailout would not arrive. Latin Americans are used to this kind of discourse from President Trump, as during his campaign, President Trump also warned Venezuelans that we are not supposed to support the constitutional presidency of Nicolas Maduro because, in the opinion of Donald Trump, President Maduro is liable of a number of crimes and lousy adjectives. Foreign interference from the United States in Latin America is quite evident. It is being felt by Grenada. Foreign interference is being felt by Trinidad and Tobago, and even by Guyana, which is in a debate on ExxonMobil's tax records that are believed not to comply with Guyanese law. Reports indicate that Guyana is not receiving its fair share from ExxonMobil operations, and there is a good probability that Guyana could enter a debt crisis similar to what Venezuela endured in the 1980s, once the price of crude oil approaches $50 a barrel or below. Foreign interference has constantly been seen in Venezuela, as the Central Intelligence Agency has already been reported to be within the country. Venezuelans are taking extreme measures, as in our daily contacts with anyone else, we must now wonder if any particular person we are talking to might be a Central Intelligence Agency agent, because in that case, that person must be prosecuted by Venezuelan authorities due to treason to the homeland. These times are not suitable for any behavior that could question patriotism of Venezuelans. And similarly will happen in Colombia, as President Petro will soon be declared illegitimate or criminal or terrorist. Perhaps a bounty of $50 million will be applied to Gustavo Petro, just as Nicolas Maduro. And the forces of war in the Caribbean will now have the complicated task of performing two regime changes at the same time. It is likely that the admiral of the Southern Command, who recently resigned, was actually fired as he refused to engage United States troops in the Caribbean for such unpatriotic missions set apart from the America First slogan that Donald Trump used to win previous election. Trump's actions are different than the promises he made during the campaign, and as a result, United States citizens are protesting against him. Military personnel are fleeing the military, and whatever is left of the United States military will probably become a rogue killing machine that will in turn be labeled as terrorist by the rest of the international community. United States believes it is isolating Venezuela, while it is actually doing the complete opposite. Venezuela is receiving a lot of unexpected support from a number of personalities and countries. The world's people do not want to see a regime change anywhere in the planet, because the rest of the international system would be in peril. The body count of killed Caribbean individuals now exceeds 30 persons. From now on, anybody who still approves this kind of actions not authorized by the United Nations against civilian and fishing boats shall be considered as accomplices of murder. The international community must get into grips and stop United States from continuing to inflict terror to the international community beyond the Caribbean Sea. Venezuela and Colombia should reunite as per Simón Bolívar's vision. Ecuador and Panama would follow suit as they continue being harassed by United States. Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago would also earn preferential treatment once We were all the same homeland. Self-determination prevails. Those who fled Venezuela are being returned through deportations. Both Gustavo Petro and Nicolas Maduro revitalize Simon Bolivar ideals while increasingly enhancing unity of our economies and militaries. Transcontinental alliances such as BRICS will insulate us from United States pretensions. Deportations target full scope of illegal migrants in excess of 300,000, whose temporary protection status expired per instructions from United States Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. United States domestic economic woes arise from shutdown government. Increased inflation generates protest. There are no longer any Venezuelan applicants for refugee status in United States, as they overstayed their TPS, temporary protection status, and wait for deportation. No negotiation is viable with the United States regime, as Republican leadership refuses to engage with either Democrats or President Nicolas Maduro. There are no standard channels available for Venezuelan illegal migrants who overstayed protection of temporary status. Their status in the United States is illegal as they are targeted by ICE authorities for deportation. Self-determination includes dismissing quixotic United States requests harmful for Caribbean. Few people meet prosecution criteria for asylum. As a result, they are overwhelmingly deported. United States and Venezuelan authorities continue arranging logistics for several weekly deportation flights. CARICOM, the Caribbean Community of Countries, reaffirms importance of dialogue and engagement towards peaceful conflict resolution.